The sound of the ice hitting the glass was the only thing that kept my hand from shaking as it passed me, with that smell of expensive perfume and cheap arrogance. "Get out of my way," was what she said, as if I were a maid getting in her way. I could feel the heat of the barbecue mixed with the cold of her contempt. Inside, I took a deep breath and thought, as I always think when she appears, the Hararaka has arrived. Sometimes I call it a rattlesnake in my head, depending on the poison of the day. My name is Tasha. I'm 28 years old, I live in Dallas, and I've been married to Malik for 5. From the beginning, I knew that his mother would be a test of patience. She has always had this air of a condominium queen, as if the whole world should make room when she passes. The difference is that in my house, the space is divided, and she never accepted that. Malik always tries to balance things, but the truth is that he grew up thinking it was normal to see his mother dictate the rules, the tone, the volume, even the temperature of the room. She's the kind of woman who arrives at a family lunch and turns the air into a minefield. That barbecue was supposed to be light, Malik's father's birthday. I had prepared everything with care: well-seasoned meat, table set, soundtrack with jazz, cold drink. It was supposed to be beautiful, but I should have known that where there are jararaka, there is poison. She arrived with that evaluative look, sweeping the yard with her eyes, looking for defects as if seeking redemption. "Oh, do you still use charcoal? Modern people use electric cars." Smile. Breathed. "I prefer the traditional flavor," I replied. She made that sound she always makes, half laughing, half snorting, which to me sounds like a snake squeaking about to attack. As I turned the meat, it came from behind. Her voice cut through the air. "You won't know the right point, girl. This type of meat is too delicate for those who only learned it on YouTube." People laughed, and her laughter was the loudest. I kept quiet. She feeds in the sound of humiliation, and I wasn't going to give her another drop of energy. Malik, of course, pretended not to hear. He was talking to his cousins, laughing out loud as if his mother's poison didn't trickle down to him too. She continued there, walking around as if prowling the territory. He talked about the towels I chose, the sauce that looked industrialized, my clothes, even my hair. "You should straighten it, it would be more presentable." At that moment, the noise of the wind hitting the awning was the only thing that prevented me from responding. I looked at the sky and asked God for only one thing: control. Because inside me, a part wanted to scream. Another part, colder, just watched and planned. I always believe that time has a perfect way of giving everything back. Sometimes it takes its time, but when it returns, it's with interest and audience. The highlight of the day came when she decided that she was going to show everyone how to do it for real. He took the tongs from my hand, pushed the plate I was holding, and said, "Get out of my way. Let me do it." I stepped aside without saying anything, but the ground, wet from the light rain that had fallen earlier, did not forgive her haste. The thin heel slipped. The noise that followed was dry and symbolic. Her body falling with everything on the floor, the sound of the glass breaking, and the silence that settled soon after. Everyone looked. Malik ran. His uncles tried to help, but no one could disguise their embarrassment. She, the queen of the barbecue, was on the floor with her dirty clothes and pride in pieces. I approached slowly, unhurriedly, looked at her and asked in a calm voice, "Did it hurt?" She tried to get up on her own, stumbling over her own words. "I'm fine. It was just a slip." I smiled. "These wet floors are treacherous, right? We never know when they lose their balance." Malik looked at me as if he understood but did not speak. I went back to meat. I became another piece. The smell of barbecue took the air again. And for the first time, she wasn't. That fall wasn't my revenge. It was the universe doing poetic justice. I didn't want the fall, but it came at the exact moment when her poison was already saturating everyone. Malik's father pretended not to see. The cousins looked away, and the sound of the previous laughter hung in the air, with nowhere to go. I continued to act as if nothing had happened, because the greatest strength of a humiliated woman is to act as if she won without having to say anything. In the following days, her silence became routine. He didn't send a message. He didn't show up without warning, and not even Malik knew how to act. Inside, I knew that a part of her was trying to swallow her own pride, and another part, perhaps for the first time, was reflecting on the limit of her own arrogance. But I learned something that day. Sometimes, what knocks down a chararaka is not the wrong boat. It is the ground that it despised. If you've ever had someone like that in your life, someone who pushes you arrogantly, thinking they'll never fall, you know exactly what I felt when I saw her silence settle in. The noise of the fall was the beginning of peace. The day after the barbecue, the house was eerily quiet, as if the sound of her falling had gotten stuck in the walls. Malik paced back and forth, fiddling with his phone, not daring to bring it up. I made coffee, put 2 mugs on the table, and waited. He took a deep breath and said that his mother had slipped, that it wasn't bad, that everyone can fall. Nodded. I knew he was trying to protect both sides, as always. But deep down, I recognized a new fear in his eyes. The fear of realizing that his mother's poison had crossed the line and that, this time, the antidote would not be my patience. Inside, I thought again of the word that has accompanied me since the first Christmas with her. Jararaka. On some days, for a change, I called her a rattlesnake, because her rattle always warns of the next humiliation. And I could already hear the rattle echoing that morning, even with the window closed. In the early afternoon, the messages began to arrive. First, Aunt Rosa, asking how I was doing and if the meat had turned out good. Then, Cousin Kendra, with that, phew, what a weather yesterday, that says everything without saying anything. Then, the Jararaka herself, with a long text, full of explanations and a calculated hint of guilt. She said she was tired, that the heel caught a crack, that I should have warned her that the floor was wet. I read everything, took a breath, and responded with one line. I hope you're okay. Is that it? She tried to start a conversation, asked about my seasoning, asked if I had filmed the birthday, wanted to seem light. I didn't wind it up. Not out of revenge, but because I learned that there are silences that protect the soul, and I was protecting mine. In the late afternoon, Malik received a call and went to his room to answer. The conversation was short, his sentences were low, and I only heard a whole word when he let himself be carried away by irritation. Respect. When he returned to the living room, sat on the couch, looked at me, and said that his mother wanted to come here, put the dots on the I's. I shook my head and calmly replied that the door is open to those who enter with respect. He looked at me with that guilty half-smile, as if recognizing the justice of the sentence and at the same time fearing the confrontation it carries. There was no fight in my tone. There was a limit. And for the first time, he felt that this limit was not going to retreat. On Monday, I started marking the small boundaries that I had been postponing. I changed the password to the electronic lock for one that only Malik and I knew. I put a non-slip mat on the porch, more for me than for her, and left a squeegee leaning against the wall with a discreet sign that said, "Wet floor, clean before passing." It was not provocation. He was careful. With the house, with my peace, with the history I wanted to live from now on. I prepared the simple dinner, rice, oven-baked chicken, cucumber salad, and while the food was baking, I sat down with Malik for a clean conversation. He said that I would not make a speech, that I would not blame anyone, but that I would not accept any more pushes, comments about my hair, or closet audit. I said it very concretely. If she wants to live together, it will be by appointment, with notice, with invitation, and always with me present. No copied key, no passing a peer. Helistend held my hand and said he understood. And for the first time, without looking away, he said he agreed. On Tuesday, the Cold War began. The Jararaka called her aunts and said that I was creating barriers, that Malik's family was losing space, that I wanted to separate mother and son. I knew because Aunt Rosa told me with that care of someone who doesn't want to increase the fire. I thanked them and asked them not to get in the way. He said that I would solve it with whoever I needed to solve. In the afternoon, I received a message from herself. Can I stop by at 4? I want to talk like 2 grown women. I breathed. 4 o'clock is exactly when I finish my shift and start preparing dinner. I replied, you can for sure. I'll wait for you at 4:15. Yes, the extra 15 minutes were part of my new rhythm. No running to meet the urgency of those who have always run me over. At 4:20, the doorbell rang, and I let it play twice before it opened. She entered with a smile, balancing a cake on a glass plate, as if sugar solved the gall. She left the cake on the table and started with the script I was expecting. I fell, it was ugly, but you didn't help either, Tasha. A loving daughter-in-law would have given me her arm. I looked at her, held the words that wanted to fly, and returned in the same calm tone that I had been training inside me. A respectful mother-in-law does not push her daughter-in-law or take the tweezers from her hand. I didn't let you fall. The ground gave you back the push. She blinked as if she hadn't heard. He repeated that it was an accident. I agreed that it was an accident, and added that humiliating was also a habit. Her look changed a little, like a mirror that cracks without bursting. Instead of backing down, she tried another way. She said that I was making everything too big, that family is made of forgiveness, that I needed to swallow certain things. I smiled slightly. I swallowed it for 5 years. Now I chew calmly and choose what remains. When she realized that the old script didn't work, she tried to paste it into Malik. She called her son to the conversation, asked him to put order. He took a deep breath and said, with a firmness that surprised me, that the order here was respect, and that, from now on, every visit would be arranged. This was the second silence of the day. The first was when I said that the ground returned the push. The second came when she understood that her son was not going to undo the newly placed limit. I saw, for armament, the rattlesnake without a rattle. She collected the sugar, talked about the cake, asked if we could start over. I said yes, as long as the restart wasn't just a pause for the next attack. She left without drama, which for her is already a drama. Before leaving, she looked at the new lock, and I saw in her eyes the silent calculation that every controller makes. How am I going to get around this? I closed the door slowly, leaned my forehead against the wood, and heard, outside, the noise of her jumping down the steps. It was not the sound of victory. It was a warning sound. The Cold War had begun, and I knew that next time it would come with more subtle venom. I also knew that I was different. It was not Tasha who asked for peace in exchange for silence. It was Tasha who gave peace as a rule and kept silence as a strategy. The next night, I received a notification in the family group, a short video of the barbecue posted by a cousin without malice just to record the birthday. In the middle of the video, for 2 seconds, her hand appears taking the tweezers of mine and her voice saying, "Get out of my face." It doesn't show the fall, but it does show the push. Their actions started timidly, with yellow laughter and emojis of shame. I didn't comment. He didn't need to. I closed my cell phone, served the food, and decided that if the Jararaka wanted to continue dancing, I would lead the rhythm. Tomorrow, I would take the next step, and it wouldn't be high. It would be firm. 2 days later, the video had already circulated all family groups, crossed the WhatsApp of aunts, cousins, neighbors, and even people who have never come here to me house. The scene was quick, but it spoke for itself. Her taking the tweezers from my hand, saying, "Get out of my way," and the cut dry before the noise of the fall. No filter, no saving cut. It was raw, real, and the echo of her phrase became the sound that everyone started to repeat in a low voice. When I went out on the street, a neighbor looked at me, sideways, and smiled as if to say, "I saw it." I just nodded, keeping the same calm tone I've learned to use when anger tries to creep in. Inside me, her silence kept growing, and interestingly, the more she kept quiet, the more I heard everything she had previously drowned out. The sound of my own dignity coming back, the sound of my inner voice telling me it's over. On Wednesday, Malik arrived early from work. I brought flowers. I didn't say why, but I knew. He finally realized what I'd endured for years, and that the weight of the push she gave me at the barbecue was the sum of everything I'd endured in silence. We sat on the couch, and he said that he had talked to his father, that his mother was sorry, but too embarrassed to apologize. I said I didn't need to ask, that sometimes silence is the most honest apology anyone can give. He laughed, a little embarrassed, and asked me if I thought I could start over. I said yes, but not on the same ground. Because the ground where someone pushes you one day needs to be cemented with respect. On Thursday, she sent a message. Simple. "Can I call you?" I looked at the screen for a few seconds, and for the first time, I didn't feel my heart racing. "Yes," I replied. Her voice came different, quiet, without the armor of sarcasm. He said he had seen the video, that he didn't know anyone had recorded it. He said that he had cried with shame, that he never imagined that the phrase would sound so cruel outside the heat of the moment. I didn't interrupt her. She continued, "I've always wanted the best for Malik, and sometimes I thought I needed to test you to see if you were strong enough. I think I exaggerated." I closed my eyes, not because it hurt, but because I understood. Her test was never about me. It was about the fear of losing control. When she finished, I answered only what was necessary. I am strong enough, but not to live in war. If you want peace, I want it too. Silence. On the other side, the sound of her breathing. Then a short sentence. "Thank you for not humiliating me when you could." The knot I had in my chest fell apart a little there. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a start. On Friday, she came here, without warning, but this time with humility. He knocked on the door, and that for me was already a miracle. He brought a vase of flowers. She said she wanted to make it clear that she was trying to change, that she didn't want her grandson to grow up watching fights. I didn't know if it was true, but I decided to believe it. I offered coffee, and we talked about everything but the barbecue. She asked about the house, praised the spice she felt in the air, and when Malik arrived, he found the two of them laughing at a silly memory about the neighbor's dog. Inside, I felt that the cycle was closing. On Saturday, I woke up early and went for a walk alone, the sun rising among the trees, the light wind hitting his face. I thought about everything that had happened. I thought about the woman I was before, who kept quiet to avoid conflict, and the woman I am now, who understands that silence can also be a limit, not submission. I learned that dignity is not to shout louder, it is to continue standing while the other sinks into their own poison. On the way back, I passed by her house. On impulse, I decided to join. I rang the bell. She opened surprised, and I just said, "I came to leave a cake, for us to start again, with no wet ground between us." She smiled, picked up the plate, and for the first time since the beginning of everything, called me daughter. When I returned home, Malik hugged me and said, "I think the worst is over." I replied, "The worst fell on its own." He laughed, and so did I, because in the end, that was it. Life has a curious way of giving back what is fair. Sometimes the push comes back disguised as a stumble. Sometimes the poison dissolves in the echo itself. Today, when I remember that afternoon, I still hear the noise of the fall, not as a sound of revenge, but as an endpoint. The Jararaka still exists, of course. No one changes overnight. But now she has learned that every snake, no matter how venomous, can slip in its wake. And I learned that silence is the most powerful antidote there is. If you've ever had someone try to push you out of your own space, remember, you don't have to push back. Just stand on the ground. The rest, life takes care of balancing. And when the noise of falling comes, don't laugh, don't fight back, just breathe. Because that sound, deep down, is the confirmation that respect has returned to occupy the place that was his.